do that. They come to us.
I don't understand what I'm doing here.
What you're doing is more than acting.
Someone made a meme that Robert Pattinson is doing everything possible to make people forget that he was in Twilight, and I cannot agree more. Right after his mind-blowing performance in Christopher Nolan's Odyssey, Pattinson appeared in the trailer for Lance Oppenheim's crime thriller, Primetime. And boy, the trailer was a goddamn roller coaster. You can literally feel the tension escalating and crawling under our skin, and the quick cuts will only make your heart beat faster. Now, I understand that amidst all the Pattinson hype and the fast-paced shots, missing out on what actually inspired the story is highly possible. So my job today is to give you all the spicy real-life details, so your homework is complete before you go into the theaters. Let's begin. The official logline is a reference to a real show. The film's description for now is extremely brief. It just reads as, in 2006, To Catch a Predator host Chris Hansen sets out to make television history. Now, To Catch a Predator was a real show which aired on Dateline NBC for 3 years, from 2004 to 2007. The show centered on 12 undercover sting operations across the US. Hansen and Dateline NBC partnered with the website Perverted Justice for a series of Dateline NBC investigations titled To Catch a Predator. As part of the operation, volunteers from Perverted Justice posed as minors, typically between the ages of 11 and 15. In online chat room. After adults attempted to arrange sexual encounters, they were invited to designated sting houses, where hidden NBC cameras captured their arrival before Hansen confronted them. In later installments, local law enforcement also participated, arresting suspects once the on-camera interviews concluded. The show aired only 20 episodes, but if you are someone who used to watch the show, I am sure you'll agree how goddamn interesting it was. Even today, you can find clips from the series all over the internet, and from what I gathered, Lance is attempting to chronicle the overall origin, rise, and cultural phenomenon this show was during its peak in 2006. Oh, also, Pattinson's character's excitement that their show would be better than Lost further confirms the 2000s timeline. And if you remember the show, Why Don't You Have a Seat? The first line Pattinson dropped in the trailer was actually Chris Hansen's catchphrase. With Primetime, screenwriter and executive producer Ajay Singh made his feature film debut. The film is based on Luke Dittrich's 2007 Esquire article, Tonight on Dateline, This Man Will Die. So who is Chris Hansen? Chris Hansen is an American television host and investigative journalist who has gathered a cult following by confronting suspected predators through undercover sting operations. Over the course of his career, Hansen has been widely celebrated and received various accolades, including 10 Emmy Awards, 5 Edward R. Murrow Awards, and other awards. Hansen was born on September 13, 1959 in Chicago, Illinois, and grew up in Michigan. He stated in an interview that his interest in journalism began when he was just 14, after he gained interest in the investigation about the disappearance of Jimmy Hoffa. Hansen later attended Brother Rice High School before graduating from Michigan State University in 1981 with a bachelor's degree in telecommunications. When asked about the biographical film being made, Hansen told Entertainment Weekly, "We had heard that there was something like this in the works. They reached out to me this week and I've been asked not to talk about it a great deal at this point." He would stay hidden in a concealed room while suspects entered and settled in. And once they thought that they were alone with a minor and began getting comfortable, Hansen would literally spawn unexpectedly to begin the interview. Moreover, he would also keep all online conversations archived and read from them openly while confronting the suspect and compare their online claims with their face-to-face reaction. The way the camera focused on Pattinson's intense eyes through the narrow opening of a closed door before he suddenly steps into the room tells us that the movie will remain truthful to how Hansen operated, and it will be pretty scandalous. Primetime will give us a full understanding of Hansen's operation. Hansen would make sure to cover the house in multiple hidden cameras that could capture almost every angle, and the trailer opened exactly like that. Shots taken from various sides. He did this to ensure that the suspect's conversations and body language was thoroughly documented, and to make his sting houses look believable and real. He would also use real food and props like those cookies we saw. These might look like mundane details to us, but it actually helped reinforce the illusion that a teenager was genuinely home alone. Hansen said in an interview with Complex, In the meantime, we're in a home or an apartment or wherever we're at. That area has already been preset up. My crew will go in the night before to install hidden cameras so it's all set. In some cases, we actually have a mini control room. When the suspect comes in, when they drive up, when they drive around, all of that's caught on hidden camera. We capture all the moments, then we'll shoot behind the scenes with the detective and the deputies working as the decoys and the people undercover. Dittrich's article tells us that Dateline would lease a house in some small town in America and wire it for sound and video, where members of Perverted Justice would come against the payment of a consulting fee and pose in online chat rooms. Chris Hansen often used psychological techniques to get the confession. Hansen's interviewing style was deliberate and he was confident AF, an energy which Pattinson is oozing beautifully in the trailer. He would walk in calmly and tell the suspect what was going on, explain who they were, and this calmness was often so intimidating that suspects sometimes ended up confessing or contradicting themselves, giving enough material for the law enforcement agencies to take over. Hansen said, "With each guy who came in, I got a little better at asking the right question." He was not someone who liked yelling or creating a scene for ratings. Rather, he chose to remain composed and just do his job while reiterating that he is not law enforcement, but a simple journalist who wanted to bring the truth out. And sometimes that made suspects lose their shit and try to run, where they often ended up in a struggle with the police officers. Now, if I bring back the cookie connection, we can assume that the movie will at least draw parts from the infamous escape attempt of Michael Willis. Michael arrived at a sting house in Florida with a bag of cookies, and after a brief conversation with the planted miner, Hansen stepped out and confronted him. However, instead of sitting down for the interview, Willis immediately turned around and headed for the door, claiming, "I was just on my way to the beach." But the moment he stepped outside, Willis suddenly ran across the lawn toward his car. But officers waiting nearby chased him down and tackled him before he could get away. From risky experiment to primetime phenomenon. There has to be a reason the movie has been titled as Primetime, because Hansen had a tough time getting his show To Catch a Predator the lucrative slot. When he first brought the concept to NBC, his idea was seen to be pushing the boundaries of television, and his raw approach was considered a risky experiment. Moreover, to feature a program that's basically built around hidden cameras and online things also meant serious ethical and legal concern. Obviously, NBC was hesitant and did not make To Catch a Predator into a full-fledged series. Instead, Hansen and his team tested the concept as a special investigation for Dateline NBC in 2004, and the response was way bigger than anyone expected. Thus, the network began producing more To Catch a Predator specials and gave them prominent primetime placements, including the Friday night 9 p.m. slot. And that's exactly how the line from the trailer, "America loves it," matches. But I guess Hansen's struggle will be portrayed far more dramatically to suit a movie narrative. The trailer suggests that a studio executive dislikes the show and gives Hansen an ultimatum: catch a predator to secure the prime time slot. That ticking clock pressure will definitely make the story more intense. Viewers were drawn to the shocking reality of the sting operations, the hidden camera footage, and Hansen's unique interview style, where he calmly confronted suspects with their own words. Hansen talked about saying, "Executive looks at me and says, 'I just don't know how to promote it,' and much to the shock of everybody in the room, I said, 'You know how to promote this? Here's how you promote it. There's a man on your back porch with his penis in his hand, and he wants to stick it in your daughter. Tonight, we're going to tell you how to prevent that from him. I don't remember that TV spot. No, there wasn't a spot, but I was so frustrated at not getting it on the air.'" The decoys often struggled emotionally. The means Hansen chose to make his show a hit, in which he succeeded, by the way, because everyone, be it Oprah or Jay Leno praising it, some minor decoys did confess having trouble getting used to the technique. A female decoy, Cassie Morrow, shared her experience on Reddit and said how she was hired. To quote Morrow, "NBC was renting out my Nana's house to hold the show and was explaining to my dad they hire a younger looking actress. My older sister was with him and they said kind of like her, and my dad said that I was even younger looking. He happened to have in his truck a magazine that I was on the cover of and showed the producer. They told him to get me down to the house and I walked through the door and the first thing the producer said was, 'You're hired.' I had no idea what it was for or what I was getting myself into. But I am in the entertainment business, so I figured, why not? The rest is history and nightmare." She experienced constant nausea and anxiety while filming for To Catch a Predator and said stuff like, "I would still feel nauseous all day, every day we were shooting. If you only knew what I was going through my head to keep me sane." Another decoy said, "You could pay me millions of dollars and I'd never go back and do it again." Now, if you bring in Skylar Gizondo's role as Dan Plum, who got hired for the show and got his pants pulled down in no time before being thrown into the sting operation, you can clearly see him hesitating and requesting for a rehearsal to understand what was happening. It's possible that Primetime will also go into these darker and anything for ratings aspects of the show, and controversies regarding Hansen's style of shooting. The case that could have been To Catch a Predator's biggest victory became its biggest controversy. The case which could have made To Catch a Predator the biggest success in television history blew up in their face and ended up becoming the moment that changed the show's future forever, but for worse. So back in October 2006, NBC and law enforcement officials targeted an assistant district attorney from Rockwall County, Texas, known as Lewis William Conrad Jr., to be their next suspect. I guess this might be the case for which we saw the police getting ready and the team members like Phoebe Bridgers' character preparing with papers all over the floor claiming this will be their greatest achievement. But it was unlike any previous confrontations Hansen and crew have had. Dittrich noted that one of the members of the Perverted Justice informed that the man they thought 19 was actually 56, that his name was Bill Conrad, that he was not a college student but rather an assistant district attorney of a neighboring county, the county's chief felony prosecutor. I guess this is where the "who gave you permission to do this" warning fits in from the trailer, because when police and the Dateline NBC's team reached Conrad's home, he refused to come outside and later shot himself as police attempted to serve warrants at his home. That may explain why we saw the night vision lights being used inside dark houses, because it's possible that the movie will show the police and SWAT teams entering the house during the warrant operation. The incident immediately became scandalous and put Hansen and his show before intense criticism over its methods. Questions were being raised about the pursuit of television ratings pushing the limits of investigative journalism. Conrad's family even filed a lawsuit against NBC Universal and Dateline, accusing the network of using aggressive tactics that led to his death, and though the case was settled out of court, the show's reputation was severely damaged. Ultimately, NBC canceled To Catch a Predator in 2008 after this infamous incident. Hansen said in an interview, "It was unfortunate. Nobody ever wanted to see it happen. But it's important to remember that, in that particular case in Texas, after it occurred, investigators found multiple images of child pornography on the hard drive that belonged to the assistant district attorney. Again, nobody ever wants to see anybody commit suicide. Of course, we should face judgment for our actions. But it's important to know, and some of this stuff doesn't come to light until years later because we don't know it and people don't get into computers. People don't have the luxury of going back and looking at something years earlier. Chris Hansen's personal life could finally take center stage. While Hansen was out there apparently doing a huge public service, his personal life was actually in shambles. The trailer shows us a blink and you'll miss it glimpse of Anna Faris as Hansen's wife, Mary Joan Hansen, and that suggests that we might witness some of his marital issues that unfolded behind the cameras. Hansen was married to Mary Joan Hansen for nearly 3 decades, but their relationship became a topic of public scrutiny after reports of his extramarital affair surfaced in 2011. However, the couple remained together for several years afterward, ultimately getting divorced in 2020. Maybe we will see how Hansen really was inside his home and how he chose to put his career before his family, which slowly eroded his marriage, because we do see an obsessed Pattinson ready to do anything to bring the suspect on television. Kristen Cadell, who was Hansen's lover, said in an interview, "Chris told me a divorce was inevitable and the wedding ring on his finger was all but for the show." One suspect brought his own son to the Sting house. It's really difficult to say which case on To Catch a Predator was most disturbing, but there are some cases we can never forget. And the episode where a suspect, a 49-year-old man, Clifford Eric Wallach, brought his own 5-year-old son to the Sting house is one of them. The incident took place during the show's Fort Myers, Florida investigation, and raised our eyebrows because what do you mean there's a kid in the middle of all this? Hansen had to abandon his usual process and instead chose to briefly introduce himself and instructed Wallach to leave the house. The police officers who were waiting stepped in and took the child to safety before arresting Wallach. Interestingly, the Primetime trailer does feature a young child running through the woods, and I can't help but think if it has any connection to this case that Lance Oppenheim might depict. Did catching predators become Chris Hansen's obsession? Towards the end of the trailer, Pattinson's Chris Hansen seemed to spiral and started behaving less like a journalist and more like a man who had been completely consumed by his mission. He believes that it is time to catch a whale and is blindly running behind fame and success. Now, there's no real evidence that the real Hansen descended into the kind of madness, and it's absolutely possible that the film is extrapolating things, but there is an actual justification behind that relentless drive. When Hansen gave a phone interview 8 months after the Conrad's suicide, he said pretty brashly, "Just like the police don't tell me how to do the interviews, we don't tell them how to do their business. Aside from saying hello in the beginning, I really don't have contact with law enforcement." Even after To Catch a Predator ended, Hansen never truly left the world of Predator investigations behind, and over the years, he had repeatedly returned to the same format. Think about Hansen vs. Predator or Takedown with Chris Hansen. He remained on the same path. Hansen explained in interviews that his goal was never to create content for shock value, and he stated, "The compelling part is to get inside these guys' heads. If you can understand how the mind of a predator works, you can better protect people from being preyed upon. That's important to me." He even pointed out that online predators have simply adapted to new platforms rather than disappearing, which is why he believes there is more activity than ever before. Alright guys, that's all for today. Yes, Chris Hansen is a sensational figure, and he has a pretty big fan following, but we cannot ignore the fact that the man is a walking magnet for controversy. And it seems like Lance Oppenheim is taking a juicy approach for his crime thriller, and Pattinson is owning the role. Do let us know your thoughts about what you're expecting from this movie in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!